I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Islamic State claims responsibility for a rocket attack on Israel. For the first time in history, an Israeli prime minister makes an official visit to Australia. And beach bums, it turns out you won't have to wait out the winter to enjoy the seaside because Tel Aviv is offering a free vacation unlike anything you've ever heard of. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The Islamic State has now officially claimed responsibility for a rocket attack on Israel that took place just yesterday. On Monday morning, 2 missiles were fired into an open field in southern Israel, but luckily they didn't cause any damage or injuries. The rockets were fired not very long after the jihadist group had accused Israel of killing 5 of its operatives in an airstrike over the weekend. The reported drone strike came just a day after the Islamic State fired 4 rockets into the Israeli resort city of Eilat. The terror organization has now posted photos on Twitter showing their jihadists preparing the most recent missiles for launch, claiming they fired the 2 rockets at, quote, southern Palestine in an online statement. The Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has already dismissed the threat posed by the jihadist group, claiming that while the Islamic State is, quote, annoying, the group doesn't really have the means to pose a serious threat to the security of Israel. The jihadist group has been mainly focused on waging a war against the Egyptian army in the Sinai Peninsula, but has long used small-scale attacks against Israel to show off its credentials. It looks like the Islamic State is busy in other parts of the Middle East as well. An attack on Syrian rebel forces on Monday left security officials in a heightened state of alert because it's just been exposed that it was carried out by yet another Islamic State-affiliated group. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins me with more. Aaron.
Thank you for having me in, Natasha. Yeah, this attack has the governments of Syria, Lebanon, and Israel worried, not just because of the proximity to our borders, but to the fact that, at least for now, the attack seems to have been successful. Syrian opposition army defector Colonel Ismail Ayoub said yesterday that, quote, in a surprise attack, Islamic State made an attack on positions held by the Free Syrian Army, or FSA, groups, which no one expected to happen so fast, end quote. Indeed, on Monday, an Islamic State affiliate group launched the previously unclaimed attack on Syrian rebel forces near the Golan Heights. The newly captured territory is near the border where Israel, Lebanon, and Syria meet. The towns allegedly lost to ISIS include Tasil, Sahem el-Golan, Adwan, and Tel Jamusa, which are situated just under 7 miles, or 11 kilometers, from the northern Israeli border.
Now, there's a lot more going on in Syria. The Syrian pro-government media service Al-Masdar has just reported that Israeli aircraft were spotted in Syrian airspace conducting strikes against a Hezbollah-bound weapons convoy. Aaron, fill us in on the details.
All right, well, in typical fashion, of course, the Israeli military has declined to confirm, deny, or even really address the strike itself, but it's really quite believable that Israel would have acted preemptively in this way. It was just yesterday that Hezbollah made it very clear that they're planning for a future attack with Israel. According to a Syrian army source, the attack took place near the Lebanese border near Damascus and the Kalamun Mountains. No casualties have been reported at this time. The alleged Israeli warplane supposedly flew first through Lebanon to reach the target in Syria. IDF spokespersons would not comment on the strike. Israel has, however, both stated and acted on in the past that it would not allow Hezbollah to continue receiving advanced weaponry. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah just this past Tuesday said, quote, in the face of Israel's threats to destroy Lebanon's infrastructure, we will not abide by red lines, especially regarding Haifa's ammonia and the nuclear reactor in Dimona. Hezbollah possesses the full courage for this, end quote. Recent reports from earlier this week report the terror group leader's claims when Hezbollah had reportedly received Russian-made anti-ship missiles.
The President of the United States may not have stated a firm commitment to a two-state solution, but the leaders of Egypt and Jordan are saying that when it comes to solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a two-state solution is non-negotiable. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and King Abdullah II have just joined for a meeting in Cairo to discuss ways to move forward with the Middle East peace conflict. Egypt and Jordan have already signed peace treaties with Israel, and both countries remain committed to a future Palestinian nation being created alongside the Jewish state. U.S. President Donald Trump recently stated that he will not be insisting on the implementation of a two-state solution and will, quote, be happy with whatever solution the Israelis and Palestinians decide together. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has not explicitly renounced his own commitment to a two-state solution, but he did choose to avoid Palestinian statehood during a joint press conference with the American leader. That very conference made waves throughout the international community, and the UN, EU, Arab League, along with many other nations, are strongly restating their support for a two-state solution as a result. On Monday, the Israeli Regional Cooperation Minister claimed that Netanyahu is in fact still committed to a future Palestinian state, but on Sunday the Haaretz newspaper reported that the Israeli leader had in fact rejected a peace proposal back in 2016. That plan detailing a two-state solution was put together in a secret meeting between Netanyahu, former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, the Egyptian president, and the Jordanian king. Do you remember the campaign promise of U.S. President Donald Trump to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Well, during last week's meeting between Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister, it became clear that Israel may need to wait a little longer than expected for that to happen. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with Jerusalem Post editor-in-chief Yaakov Katz to discuss the matter, and Katz says he's not surprised by the broken promise.
So I don't want to say I told you so, but I was one of the skeptics from the beginning about the possibility that the embassy would move. From just the very simple reason that it's one thing to make a campaign promise or a promise during a campaign, it's in a void, it's in a vacuum, you could say whatever you want, there's no price to pay. But then when you come into office and you get a phone call from King Abdullah in Jordan who says, Mr. President, I'm your last friend in the Middle East. I will have riots on the streets of Amman. We need to fight ISIS. I got hundreds of thousands of refugees from Syria. Why threaten me in that way? Then you get a call from King Salman, who calls up his buddy Rex Tillerson, who he knows from ExxonMobil deals, right, oil deals in the Middle East, and he says to Rex, "What are you doing? Like, what? You know, we got bigger fish to fry. We got to fight ISIS. We got Iran to confront, and they're on the rise in the region. Don't do this embassy thing." And then you get what's called realpolitik. You see, there's a real world out there, and what you say and do has real repercussions on a region like the Middle East, and therefore it was really no surprise that this thing has been delayed. It's a travesty, don't get me wrong. The American embassy, just like every other embassy of the world, should be in our capital, which is Jerusalem. But I don't think that it's going to happen anytime real soon. For the world, this would be a concession. It would be seen as giving something to Israel that Israel might not deserve at the moment. And therefore, I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near future. This is a real unique opportunity to set down new rules of engagement, a new strategic relationship with the United States. You don't want to ruin that because of one outpost here or a home there. You want to create understandings and an alliance that will be able to weather any of the challenges that we face here in the region. And we can't forget, we still have Iran, which is on the rise. ISIS is out there. Hamas is arming itself in the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah just threatened Israel last week that they're going to hit the nuclear reactor in Dimona and cause devastation throughout the country. So we have major problems. The settlements is an issue, but that's not the big focus, or that shouldn't be the big focus for us.
Iranian leaders have long railed against Israel, with several even threatening to wipe the Jewish state off the map. The hardline Islamic Republic's supreme leader is continuing that tradition, with claims that Israel's beginning to disintegrate amid worldwide opposition to its policies. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's remarks come amid heightened tensions with the Jewish state, as Jerusalem continues to lobby its allies such as Washington to step up actions against Tehran.
با پدیدار شدن نشانه‌های افول رژیم صهیونیستی و ضعفی که بر متحدان اصلی آن به ویژه ایالات متحده آمریکا حاکم شده است، مشاهده می‌شود که اندک اندک فضای جهانی نیز به سمت مقابله با اقدامات خصمانه و غیرقانونی و غیر انسانی رژیم صهیونیستی میل می‌کند.
The fundamentalist Shiite cleric made the inflammatory statements during the 6th annual international conference his nation hosts on behalf of the Palestinians.
یکی از دستاوردهای این نشست ارزشمند مطرح کردن اولویت نخست جهان اسلام و آزادیخواهان جهان یعنی موضوع فلسطین و ایجاد فضای همدلی برای تحقق هدف والای حمایت از مردم فلسطین و مبارزات حق طلبانه و عدالتجویانه آنان است.
Khamenei went on at length to applaud the Palestinians for their heroic resistance against Israel. While utterly ignoring the Jewish people's ancient roots in the Holy Land, he dismissed Israel as being an artificial creation. The two-day event is being attended by nearly 700 delegates from 80 countries. Even though the trial and sentencing of Israeli soldier Elor Azaria has ended, it's clear that both legal issues and controversy will continue to swirl around the deeply dividing case for some time to come. A military court has sentenced Sergeant Elor Azaria to serve 18 months in prison after convicting him on manslaughter charges a month ago. He's been ordered to start serving that sentence on March 5th. The soldier shot and killed a Palestinian terrorist who was incapacitated while stabbing other Israeli troops in Hebron. Military judges overruled Azaria's justification the assailant still posed a danger and found him guilty of violating the Israeli army's code of ethics.
בית הדין העביר בהכרעת הדין וגם בגזר הדין שניתן היום מסר חשוב לכלל המפקדים והחיילים בצה"ל באשר לערכי צה"ל ולחשיבות השמירה על טוהר הנשק. ברור לנו שזה לא יום קל עבור הנאשם ובני משפחתו, אבל את הדין צריך לעשות והדין נעשה.
Judges gave Azaria less than the 20 years the offense permits due to his unblemished military record prior to the March 2016 shooting. Palestinian officials, however, call his victim Asharif an Arab martyr and say his extrajudicial death was deliberate. The fallen terrorist's family is denouncing the sentence as unjust.
الضباط الأعلى مرتبة منه لم يقدموا إلى هذه المحاكمة. في النتيجة تكون المحاكمة هي محاكمة مكتوبة من قبل الاحتلال الإسرائيلي كتمثيلية. أعد السيناريو والتأليف والإخراج الجانب الإسرائيلي. فما كعائلة ماذا توقعنا؟ توقعنا هذا الحكم البسيط ضد هذا الجندي.
Azaria's family is also lamenting the sentence because they don't think he should be imprisoned for neutralizing a terrorist who had only moments earlier tried to kill Israelis. That view is shared by nearly half of Israeli Jews who say any Palestinian attacker should be killed on the spot. While Azaria's little sister Eti wrote on Facebook that she's ashamed of her country for imposing the sentence, her parents showed greater signs of patriotism. The soldier's mother Oshra painted her nails with the national colors to spell out the words "Mother's Hero," while his father led about 100 supporters outside the courtroom in singing the national anthem. Defense attorneys are now vowing to overturn their client's entire conviction.
אנחנו מערערים משום שמבחינתנו ההרשעה בעבירת הריגה יותר חמורה מאשר כל עונש שלא קיבל או היה מקבל. משום שהרשעה בעבירת הריגה, כפי שציין עורך הדין שפטל, אינה תואמת את העובדות שהוצגו בפני בית הדין.
Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is underscoring the mitigating circumstances that prompted Azaria's actions and appears to favor a presidential or military pardon. That view is shared by much of the public as well as right-wing lawmakers.
כל יום שאלאור עזריה יושב מאחורי סורג ובריח הוא פשוט כתם שחור ומכוער לצבא ההגנה לישראל, כתם שחור ומכוער למערכת המשפט. עצוב לי מאוד שהשופטים היום לא פקחו את עיניהם, לא הסתכלו על התמונה כולה ולא הבינו שהם צריכים להקשיב גם לרחשי הלב, גם למציאות הקשה וההתמודדות היומיומית של מדינת ישראל שנמצאת במלחמה מול אויב אכזר.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't given any official statements during his overseas tour, but immediately after the soldier's arrest expressed sympathy to the Azaria family during a telephone conversation. Today, Benjamin Netanyahu became the first Israeli Prime Minister to ever make an official visit to Australia, where that nation's leader is offering his staunch support of the Jewish state, particularly by criticizing the United Nations. Netanyahu received a warm ceremonial welcome from Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, which included an honor guard and inspection of the troops. The two leaders then made a joint statement to the press.
I'm honored to be the first Israeli Prime Minister to officially visit Australia. God, it's been a long time coming. And it celebrates really 100 years of friendship of Australia to the Jewish people and their state.
The Israeli leader acknowledged that Canberra backs a two-state solution to the Palestinian crisis, but laid out key points on which Jerusalem will not compromise.
It's not conceivable that people will say the Palestinians should have a state and continue to call for the annihilation of the Jewish state, Israel. So obviously asking the Palestinians to recognize a Jewish state is mandatory, and people must do that. Secondly, we know that in the realities of the Middle East, if Israel is not there to ensure security, then that state very quickly will become another bastion of radical Islam. So this is what I've been talking about, and I've been talking about it for 8 years. I said we have to make sure that the Palestinians recognize the Jewish state, and we have to ensure that Israel has the overriding security control of all the territories, all the territories. Other than that, I want the Palestinians to be able to govern themselves and to have all the freedoms to do so, but not the freedom to destroy the Jewish state. They have to recognize Israel, and Israel has to have the residual military control. That's my view. It hasn't changed.
For his part, Turnbull made it clear that Australia will not support any resolutions condemning Israeli settlement policies, such as the one approved by the United Nations Security Council in December.
We do not support one-sided resolutions which condemn or criticise Israel of that kind. We haven't done in the past, and we won't in the future. It's a complex problem. It needs to be resolved by direct negotiations between the parties, and we certainly encourage that. So that is our position, and it's been consistent. We are a very committed friend of Israel. We are a very consistent friend.
While he's in the Commonwealth, the Israeli premier is scheduled to sign several mutual pacts aimed at fostering closer bilateral economic and defense cooperation with Australia. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today arrived in Australia following his two-day visit to Singapore. This marks the first ever official visit of a sitting Israeli Prime Minister to Australia. And joining me today to discuss the implications is Nathan Jeffey, the Israel correspondent for the Australian Jewish News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
All right, so I think the big question on everybody's minds about this visit is why did it take so long for a sitting Israeli PM to make it to Australia?
Well, the simple answer is that it's so far away, and prime ministers tend to be busy people. But there have been attempts to have some official Israeli visits in recent years. Mr. Netanyahu was actually meant to visit in 2014, and then there was the Gaza conflict. Avigdor Lieberman was also supposed to visit in the same year, and Reuven Rivlin, the president, was meant to visit last year and ended up going to Russia instead to talk about some of the regional instability. So that's why it's taken so long, but I think there was a major push to make this actually happen this year because it's the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Beersheba, in which Australian forces were key in basically causing that turnaround in the First World War, which paved the way for the British taking control of what was then Palestine and really paved the way to the establishment of the Jewish state. So there's that very kind of historic connection, which I think made the Israelis determined that it would actually happen this year.
Well, and I mean, there are going to be a lot of Australians coming to Israel for this ceremony that's going to be taking place very soon, correct? We can talk about that a little later. But, you know, I think also we'd like to know, what do you think Israel and Australia are going to cooperate the most on? What are the main topics of discussion during this meeting, whether that's technology, water?
A lot of the strategic and regional concerns are the same. Although Australia is in a situation where it understands that bigger powers are taking care of many of these things, but the interest in Israeli technology is really significant and really genuine. We have a situation where when Australians enthuse about Israeli technology, this is not just lip service, this is a country that's basically readjusting after a major mining boom and is trying to move away from that kind of heavy industry, looking for new directions and looking at Israel and really being wowed by Israeli technology. Last week was the R-Crowd Summit in Jerusalem, recruiting investors for Israeli technology. And this R-Crowd company, which is crowdsourcing funding for startups, 20% of its funding is coming from Australia. That's an indication of the kind of interest. Also, there were 2 major visits last year. The Premier of New South Wales visited, and the Foreign Minister of Australia visited as well. Both of them, I was following both of those figures around, and the conversation all the time was Israeli technology. I went with them to meetings at Hebrew University, genuine interest there, and genuine just wow factor by what's going on in Israel. So that's a very central.
So I guess the final question for you is, what is next for Israel and Australia?
So Australia is seen as a good and loyal friend of Israel. That's for sure, and the body language and the conversation has been very warm so far during the trip. There is strong condemnation from Australia of the United Nations for the language with which it condemned settlements late last year. There is some friction over the settlement issue, but Australia is really seen as the kind of friend that Israel wants to have at the moment, one which is gently pushing Israel towards the two-state solution, but at the same time not saying that settlements are the only obstacle, and giving a lot of moral support to Jerusalem.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming in and kind of informing us a little bit more about what is taking place with Israeli-Australian foreign relations. And you mentioned this earlier, you didn't say that right now in our interview, but there may soon be a direct flight between Australia and Israel. And if that's the case, I'll be on the next one. We all remember staring out the window during long family road trips. I know that when I was a kid, I used to wait for the windows to get all foggy so I could paint pictures on them with my fingers. Well, my childhood activity might now be a thing of the past because an Israeli startup is introducing interactive smart windows to the world. Mercedes-Benz cars will soon feature the incredible technology in partnership with the Israeli company called Gauzy. Gauzy's developed a new way to share location and time-based messages on car windows by using their unique quid crystal glass panels, or smart glass. The patented technology reinvents glass by allowing users to control its transparency with their hands. The company's marketing director, Brittany Suissa, even says the new technology will allow parked cars to project location-based ads, similar to how posters are displayed on buses. If you're worried the images could interfere with your driving, Gauzy has your back. When the engine of your car starts, the windows become transparent in order to enable safe driving. The technology was first unveiled last week at the Autobahn Expo Day in Stuttgart, Germany. The expo showcases nearly a dozen startups for over 1,200 people. I don't know about you, but I love the beach so much, sometimes I wish I could live on it. Well, somebody has been heeding my prayers because Israel is on a mission to make our summer plans even more luxurious by converting one of Tel Aviv's famous lifeguard towers into a 5-star hotel. Now, here's the best part. You could even win a free vacation in the new Mediterranean spot. Yesterday, the city of Tel Aviv and the Israeli Ministry of Tourism announced that they are sponsoring a competition where contestants can win a 4-day vacation in Tel Aviv at the end of March. But best of all, winners will get to spend their first night in the soon-to-be renovated lifeguard tower on Tel Aviv's well-known Frishman Beach. Now, in case you're worried about what one of these typically dilapidated buildings will look like from the inside, the Tel Aviv municipality has got it covered. The lifeguard hut will be converted into a 5-star joint, and it will even include room service and a personal butler. So if you want to take part in the competition, all you have to do is upload a photo of yourself to Instagram with the hashtag #TakeMeToTelAviv. Just make sure you're wearing beach gear and the backdrop features your home city. The Israeli Ministry of Tourism and the Brown Hotel chain are pioneering the transformation of some of Tel Aviv's most well-known lifeguard towers into 5-star hotels, all as part of a mission to showcase Israel as a leading tourist destination during the winter.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for today's Hebrew word of the day. It's better to be safe than sorry when you're swimming in the ocean. So today's word is metzil, which means lifeguard. Here in Israel, it's hard to miss metzilim when you're on the beach. They certainly aren't your average quiet onlooker. In fact, Israelis are so used to hearing the metzilim yell at them whenever they swim out too far that they're probably a little more cautious than your average swimmer, which can be a shocking thing to say about Israelis who usually like to make their own rules for themselves. Now, if you get caught doing something you're not not supposed to do on the beach. Stay calm. Israeli Mitzilim will make sure to save you. They'll probably just yell at you in the process. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a low of 49 or 9 degrees Celsius. Temperatures are set to rise a bit tomorrow to a high of 66 or 90 degrees Celsius, although the sky will remain partly cloudy throughout the day. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.71 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.